We begin this afternoon at the Blue House, where President Lee Jae-myung has just wrapped up his New Year's press conference. Our correspondent Song Yoo-jin joins us live from the Blue House with the details. Yoo-jin?
Right, Hae-ryun. So as you just mentioned, President Lee's New Year's press conference just ended here at the White House, at the Blue House at the Yeongbin-gwan Reception Hall. It began at 10 a.m. and lasted for almost 3 hours, double the originally scheduled time. It began with President Lee's opening remarks, where he outlined his top 5 policy priorities for the new year.
지방 주도 성장, 기회와 과실을 고루 나누는 모두의 성장. 안전에 기반한 지속 가능한 성장, 문화가 이끄는 매력적인 성장, 그리고 평화가 뒷받침하는 안정적 성장. 5가지 대전환의 길은 대한민국을 대도약의 새로운 미래로 이끌 지름길이자 전 세계에 보여줄 성장과 도약의 새로운 모범이 될 것입니다.
Right, Yoo-jin, so what were the key takeaways?
So the Q&A session was divided into 3 categories: the economy, politics and diplomacy, and then society and culture. Starting with the economy, when asked about South Korea's persistently high housing prices, despite the Lee administration rolling out 2 rounds of real estate measures, President Lee answered that the government will soon announce a new plan to increase housing supply, to which he described will include, quote, concrete and realistic figures. There was also a question on the U.S.'s threat to impose 100% semiconductor tariffs on semiconductor imports. Take a listen.
저는 반도체 문제는 대만과 대한민국의 시장 점유율이 80-90% 이렇게 될 텐데 100% 관세 올리면 아마 미국의 반도체 물가가 100% 오르는 결과가 오지 않을까. 대만보다는 불리하지 않게 하겠다고 하는 합의를 그때 이런 경우를 대비해서 미리 다 합의를 해놨죠. 반도체는 다른 나라보다 불리하게 하지 않는다. 대만보다 불리하게 하지 않는다.
Moving on to diplomacy and national security, President Lee spent a significant amount of time addressing inter-Korean relations, describing the accumulated distrust and hostility as extremely deep, referring to the recent alleged civilian drone launches into North Korea. He once again stressed the importance of dialogue between North Korea and the United States to ease tensions, pledging to continue playing what he called a pacemaker role to help facilitate talks. Moving on to North Korea's nuclear program, Lee said it is unrealistic to simply hope the regime will give up its nuclear weapons, noting that Pyongyang has in fact continued to expand its arsenal. Instead, he again brought up his 3-step approach, first stopping the regime's nuclear program with partial incentives, followed by negotiations, and ultimately leading to the complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. That's all I have for now. Back to you, Hae-ryun.
Thank you for your report, Yoo-jin. U.S. President Donald Trump says massive investment funds secured from South Korea and Japan will be channeled into an Alaska natural gas project, underscoring the America First economic agenda. The announcement, made on the first anniversary of his second-term inauguration, also reignited debate over tariffs and the role of foreign investment in U.S. energy development. Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump marked the first anniversary of his second-term inauguration on Tuesday with the White House news conference, highlighting his economic record and renewed America First push. Trump announced that large investment funds secured through trade deals with South Korea and Japan will be directed to an Alaska natural gas development project, calling the agreements unprecedented. He said the Alaska pipeline will export natural gas to Asian markets. Under the deal, South Korea agreed to invest $350 billion in the U.S. in exchange for lowering reciprocal tariffs from 25% to 15%. Of that amount, $150 billion will go to shipbuilding, while $200 billion will be allocated to energy, semiconductors, and artificial intelligence tied to national security. Japan pledged a separate $550 billion in investment. The Alaska LNG project, a key Trump initiative, involves a 1,300-kilometer pipeline from Alaska's North Slope, with initial costs estimated at $45 billion. During the news conference, Trump also touted his first-year accomplishments, dramatically tossing a stack of papers he said documented his record onto the floor before turning to inflation and criticizing the Biden administration's economic policies.
But here's the book. These are all things we have. I'm going to read a few of the samples, but look at this. These are all, each line is something that we did. Nobody did that before. And it's big stuff, too. Look, we have the hottest country in the world.
Trump also addressed ongoing legal uncertainty over his global tariffs, saying he does not know how the Supreme Court will rule, and acknowledged that the U.S. could be forced to repay hundreds of billions of dollars if it loses. He nonetheless defended the tariffs as essential for national security and federal revenue, insisting they have not fueled inflation.
I don't know what the Supreme Court's going to do. If we lose that case, it's possible we're going to have to do the best we can in paying it back. I don't know how that's going to be done very easily without hurting a lot of people. But we're waiting for that case anxiously.
The comments come as the Supreme Court has yet to rule on the tariff case, despite expectations that a decision could come as early as this week. In August, a federal appeals court ruled that Trump's use of the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act exceeded presidential authority, affirming a lower court's decision issued last May. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea's Finance Minister Koo Yoon has announced plans to bolster export financing with a new policy-backed funding vehicle. Speaking at a meeting of economy-related ministers on Wednesday, the minister said support will be expanded to cover long-term and lower credit projects, including defense, nuclear power, and industrial plants, to help firms enter new markets. He also announced plans to introduce a so-called Strategic Export Finance Fund, designed to channel corporate gains back into strengthening the broader industrial ecosystem. Koo added that the government will roll out targeted incentives to boost potential growth, ease polarization, and promote shared growth between large corporations and small and medium-sized companies. Former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo is set to hear his verdict in the trial over his role in the December 3rd martial law declaration. The ruling will set the tone for former President Yoon as the court decides on whether the martial law declaration by Yoon was an act of insurrection. Our Kim Do-yeon has more.
CCTV footage from December 3rd, 2024 captures the historic moment when then-President Yoon Suk-yeol leaves a room with his cabinet to declare martial law. His cabinet is seen sitting motionless, failing to intervene. The evidence emerged during the trial of former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, with the court delivering its verdict on Wednesday afternoon. The ruling will set a critical precedent, marking the first time a court will decide if a martial law declaration itself constitutes an act of criminal insurrection. Han faces charges of perjury and abetting the ringleader, with prosecutors arguing the move was an attempt to seize power through a self-coup.
The December 3rd martial law declaration is believed to have stemmed from the idea that it would succeed, much like a typical self-coup.
Prosecutors have requested a 15-year prison sentence, arguing Han abandoned his duty as the only official capable of stopping the situation. Han denies the allegations. He admits failing to prevent the declaration, but testified he never agreed with or aided the attempt.
Although I failed to stop the martial law declaration, I never agreed to it or attempted to help. That is the most honest, final confession I can offer in this historic courtroom today.
The ruling will inevitably impact the ruling of former President Yoon, set for February 19th, and 4 other cabinet members. Yoon faces charges of leading an insurrection, for which prosecutors have demanded the death penalty, which is the statutory maximum. If the court accepts the insurrection charge in Han's verdict, it signals a grim outlook for the former president. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
South Korea is moving to ease its doctor shortage with an additional national medical licensing exam this year. The measure allows fourth-year medical students who returned to school last summer after policy disputes to qualify for licensure by August. About 1,800 students graduating that month are expected to receive licenses and enter hospitals immediately. The Health Ministry says the rare supplementary exam will be held in spring and summer, with clinical skills tests running from March to April and a written exam scheduled for July. Normally, the medical licensing exam is held once a year in the fall and winter. In Central Seoul's Yeongsan-gu district lies the War Memorial of Korea, which recently witnessed its number of foreign visitors triple in just 3 years. Kim Bo-kyung has this report.
From 170,000 in 2022 to more than 520,000 in 2025. That is more than a threefold increase in the number of foreign visitors to the War Memorial of Korea. Worldwide interest in South Korea's culture has spilled over into K-history, and many foreign officials' visits to the War Museum pushed the increase in numbers.
Last year, about 1,500 VIPs from 105 countries visited the memorial and found it very helpful in learning about Korea. Participant nations in the Korean War also said the exhibition was deeply moving in its powerful presentation of their history.
General Xavier Brunson, the commander of U.S. Forces Korea, recently visited as well, hinting at the possibility of including visits to the War Memorial of Korea in educational programs for U.S. service members stationed here.
It would foster pride and a sense of duty, reaffirm the Korea-U.S. blood alliance, and greatly strengthen the morale and mission awareness of the U.S. Forces Korea.
As if to show the boosted interest in Korean history, there were many foreign visitors even in the freezing cold.
I've been recommended by some colleagues at work to come here. I think it's particularly important to learn about the history of the country.
Many foreign visitors' main interest lies in the Korean War, during which General MacArthur's Incheon landing successfully ended the North's occupation of the South and led to the current division of the Korean Peninsula with DMZ in the middle. Another exhibition room that draws attention is the section explaining how UN member states dispatched troops and medical units to support the Republic of Korea.
Through detailed accounts of the roles played by troops and medical teams from 22 UN member countries, visitors can learn about their own nation's contributions. This helps them feel a deeper connection to Seoul and a shared sense of history.
As global interest in Korea continues to grow, the War Memorial of Korea is emerging as a key destination, serving as a powerful gateway to understanding the country's past. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
South Korea's Cultural Heritage Authorities have given conditional approval for K-pop megastar boy band BTS to film at major historic sites in Seoul ahead of the group's comeback in March. The approval from the Korean Heritage Service covers Gyeongbokgung Palace and Sungnaemun Gate for use in a planned Gwanghwamun show, pending a review of the project's impact on cultural assets. The decision allows BTS to record videos in the areas, most likely on a Tuesday, when the site is closed to the public. Seoul City is still in the process of approving a request by the group's agency HYBE to hold a show at Gwanghwamun Square, as well as a separate event at Seoul Plaza. BTS is set to release its fifth full-length album, Arirang, on March 20th, the band's first new album in nearly 4 years. KTX high-speed trains are being introduced on the Donghae line connecting Busan and Gangneung for the first time. As travel time is reduced by more than an hour, a boost to the tourism industry is expected. Cha Yoon-kyung reports.
A KTX EUM train departing from Bujeon Station in Busan arrives at Gangneung Station. Since the 30th of last month, KTX EUM trains with a top speed of 260 kilometers per hour have been operating on the Donghae line for the first time, running 3 round trips a day between Busan and Gangneung. The biggest change is travel time. The journey from Busan to Gangneung now takes about 3 hours and 50 minutes, which is 1 hour and 10 minutes shorter than the existing ITX Maum train service.
I fell asleep, and when I woke up, we were already almost there. I think I would use it again the next time I come to Gangneung.
Since its opening in January last year, the Donghae line has recorded more than 1.8 million cumulative passengers. With the introduction of the KTX service, up to 2,000 additional passengers per day can be accommodated, and annual ridership is expected to increase to around 2.8 million. Local governments along the East Coast have also prepared tailored strategies to ensure that the KTX service leads to a vitalization of tourism.
If you present your train ticket, you can use 10 attractions, including the marine rail bike, the ocean cable car, and Hwasonggur Cave at the same discount rate as Samcheok residents.
However, due to limitations in track capacity, 7 out of 8 existing ITX train services have had their departure and arrival stations changed from Gangneung to Donghae Station, reducing travel options for passengers traveling to Gangneung. The Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport plans to review the possibility of increasing train services based on track capacity and passenger demand trends. 장윤경, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. U.S. President Donald Trump said the United States will very shortly begin targeting drugs entering the country by land, expanding his administration's anti-narcotics campaign. Trump told reporters on Tuesday that the move follows U.S. military strikes on suspected drug boats in the Caribbean Sea and Pacific Ocean, which he said has sharply reduced drug trafficking by water. He said land routes are now the focus, but did not name any country involved in the trafficking. Trump's remarks come as U.S. military forces seized a 7th oil tanker linked to Venezuela on Tuesday. The U.S. Justice Department has served 6 grand jury subpoenas to Minnesota state and local officials as part of an investigation into alleged obstruction of federal immigration enforcement. Those subpoenaed on Tuesday include Democratic Governor Tim Walz, the Attorney General, and the mayors of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Sources told the Associated Press the probe centers on public statements and possible violations of a federal conspiracy statute related to obstruction of immigration authorities. Minnesota officials called the investigation politically motivated, while federal attorneys said the state is improperly seeking to limit federal law enforcement powers. The subpoenas come amid weeks of unrest following an immigration crackdown. Iranian authorities have reportedly shut down 40,000 Starlink satellite internet terminals, tightening information controls following weeks of anti-government protests. That's according to German news outlet DPA, citing Iranian state media. Officials have not clarified whether the devices were physically seized or remotely deactivated, but the move comes despite earlier promises to gradually restore internet access. Iran is now reportedly pushing to permanently restrict global internet access to a small group of government-approved users, while the broader population remains confined to a state-controlled domestic network. Netflix has revised its takeover bid for Warner Bros. Discovery, offering an all-cash bid of $72 billion to secure shareholder approval and fend off a rival bid from Paramount. The revised deal released on Tuesday keeps the price at $27.75 per share, removes stock components, and aims to speed up a shareholder vote expected as early as April. Warner's board again backed Netflix's offer, while Paramount looks to legal action and a potential proxy fight. Analysts say whichever deal prevails will face intense antitrust scrutiny and a prolonged regulatory review. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Yesterday's bitter winds were already harsh, but it's even colder today. Seoul saw the coldest morning of the season at minus 13 degrees Celsius, and of course that freezing air is adding more chill to the air. Along with the cold, heavy snow is falling across the west coast of the Jeolla-do provinces and Jeju Island. Through tomorrow, Ulleungdo Dokdo could see up to 30 centimeters of snowfall. Mountainous areas of Jeju Island might receive up to 25 centimeters. The west coast of Jeolla-do might get up to 10 centimeters with a heavy snow advisor issued in those regions. And this afternoon, Seoul will be getting up to -5 degrees Celsius. Daegu, Gwangju make it to 0 degrees this afternoon. And this round of intense cold is forecast to reach its peak tomorrow, while snow will linger along the west coast and Jeju Island. And on this bone-chilling day, stretching a bit before heading out could help keep your body movement smooth, which will lower the risk of slipping or sudden muscle strain. Stay warm and safe.